Saudi Arabia has removed its commander who was in charge in Yemen, and the official justification given by the Saudis are corruption charges. So he's been removed. His son has been, who was the governor of a Saudi state, has been removed, and a couple of other individuals, which I don't know if they're family members or if they were part of the army, but they were part of the whole. The four or five of them were removed at the same time. I think those are pretty much the details of this story. Are there any specific details, Sam, that you'd like to add?
Not specifically about the removal of this general, but it seems to be part of wider development in the Yemeni situation. Following the recent break between UAE and Saudi on the war, now UAE is supporting Southern separatists.
Sorry, let me just give a quick overview of the Yemen civil war.
Sure, of course.
So as many of you are aware, Yemen has had a civil war going on between the Houthi rebels, which are quote unquote supported by Iran, and the official, I guess, the official Yemeni government. They're recognized, I think, by the UN, and they're backed by the Saudis and UAE. So as mentioned, this war has been going on since 2015, this civil war. It has led to over 100,000 deaths, including 12,000 civilians. These are very, I think, conservative estimates. And as well as the death of 85,000 people in addition due to famine. And this is because out of a country of, I mean, the UN calls Yemen, has been calling Yemen for at least 5 years the worst humanitarian crisis out there. So they've been labeled as the worst humanitarian crisis, despite the fact that the Syrian civil war was also going on at the same time. So out of a population of 28 million, according to the UN, these are the latest figures, over 24 million people need humanitarian assistance. 3.6 million people have been internally displaced. So within Yemen, they have been forced to leave their homes, move to other cities, move to internal displacement refugee camps. And 20 million out of the 28 million are food insecure as well. And Yemen has been struggling with a cholera outbreak this whole time, which has killed an additional 2,500 people. So I'm not sure if it falls within those that died of famine, I guess not. But 2,500 have been killed due to the cholera outbreak. And I'll just have also small stats on COVID-19. So apparently there have been, as of 31st of July, so these numbers are from a month ago, there are apparently only 1,700 confirmed cases, which you can say is not so bad, but this has resulted in 494 deaths. So pretty much 1 out of 3 Yemenis who got coronavirus, unfortunately, passed away due to the virus. But yeah, that was just a quick overview of the humanitarian situation. I think Sam will now get into more a bit about the political situation and the recent developments there too.
Just a quick correction. UAE doesn't back the internationally recognized government anymore. They back the separatists since about 6 months ago or something. And the southern separatists, not the Houthis. And
so there are 3 stakeholders, quote unquote, now in Yemen, right?
At least, I mean, it's difficult to separate between the southern separatists and Al Qaeda because Al Qaeda is also there, and UAE does not, at least officially, does not support Al Qaeda, but they do support southern separatists, which are very similar and closely aligned in some cases with Al Qaeda. And they have taken over a strategic island off the coast of Yemen, UAE forces. And a day ago, 2 months ago, they dismissed the governor, which was put there by that island was before controlled by the Saudi-backed government, the official UN recognized government, Al-Hadi's government. So 2 months ago, they dismissed him, and they just put on their own governor, and then local tribal leaders accuse them, this is allegation, not confirmed, that UAE is allowing Israel to come to this island. It's a very beautiful island with natural beauties, and it's in a strategic position. So, that's, to be honest, that's just an allegation at this point, and it's been a day, so I don't know that quickly after one day of becoming governor. I don't know how they could bring the Israelis that fast. But yeah, it's I mean, I think, to be honest, the removal of I was looking into that news, the removal of the general. I mean, it seems to be partially like Ben Salman's general strategy that whenever he is not popular at home, he says corruption and removes a couple of people. And then, but I've heard that he is still popular with the young because of his anti-corruption policies. I don't know if it's still gonna work. And to be honest, in general, I think Saudis are slowly reducing their involvement in Yemen, because I think the southern separatists are far more successful than Hadi's government. And Yemen was for a very long time Yemen is like the south is very sunny, and mountains in the north are very Shia, a very unique sect of Shia. So it does kind of make sense for it to go that way anyway. So yeah, I think it may be part of that development, but maybe not, because it's such a secretive state. Who knows?
Yeah. But I mean, definitely seems like the civil war there has either reached a stalemate, or you can even say, I mean, I don't think the Houthis are losing. They're not gaining, but they're not losing, right? They still have control of Sana'a. And now that there's this little, well, there's, the UAE and Saudi aren't necessarily aligned 100% in Yemen. There doesn't seem to be much for the Saudis there except wasting resources and killing people.
Yeah, I mean, the thing it's I mean, there are still issues like the prestige issue, obviously, because I mean, I don't personally think Houthis are Iranian proxies, but they did become far closer to Iran during this period. It did become a sort of a, they did form in blocks, Iran and Houthis. So it's a bit of a prestige issue for Saudis. It's a bit of a security issue to have an Iranian allied group right at your border. It's a security issue. But I just, at this point, I don't think Saudi can afford the cost anymore, because they had issues with the what do you call it? The public IP of their Aramco, their oil company. That didn't go as well as they wanted, and the whole Corona thing, oil prices. So they have serious financial issues as well. So I don't think. I mean, it definitely did not worth it was not worth it ever because of the human cost. But just putting that aside, sadly, yeah, I think at this point it's not even politically justified to continue this war.
Yeah. So, I mean, now they're going to have to turn to their PR machine and pretty much spin this the best way possible over the next coming years.
That's what they've been doing for the last 4 years, really. So yeah, they're gonna continue that and probably reduce their involvement. That's my guess, but who knows?
Yep, yep. That makes sense. Okay. So, what else do you have for us today?
Well, there were a couple of interesting uh, news stories, sort of about media. First of all, the new BBC Director General started his post, and let me. The BBC Director General Tim Davie. Tim Davie, eh, pretty much to be honest, I can't believe that he's been made Director General. He has a history in BBC. I think he was the head of political programming in BBC before he left to lead the media campaign for probably the least, one of the least successful politicians ever, Theresa May. So I don't know how, just after that disastrous job you've done for her, although she was such an awful candidate, I don't know if anybody could have helped her. But yeah, Tim Davie is starting as the Director General of the BBC, and the first signs are not good at all because, well, in my view at least, he's been talking a lot about, taking, there is too much political bias in the BBC, which is basically code for BBC's too left wing. And he's been signaling he's gonna bring in more right-wing comedy, which what like anyway, and he's gonna try to like possibly cut some left-wing comedies like the MASH report maybe under threat. Mock the Week, which is a hugely popular program in the UK, that might be uh, first of all, those programs are not left wing. I mean, they're not. They're basically social democrat, centrist type, And secondly, right wing comedy. Have you heard of any right wing comedians? I, to be honest, maybe one or two that are not political. They're just normal, just everyday comedians. But just right wing comedy, really?
I mean, what does that even mean? I mean, that could mean two things. One is that, I don't know, you allow more like racist or homophobic jokes and content.
No.
Or,
No, to be
or I mean, what? The people look more conservative in the shows? Or, I mean, what does that mean?
to be honest, they mean more people who are more supportive of Tories and possibly more supportive of privatization and austerity measures and like nationalistic, not maybe racist, sometimes maybe, but you never know. So that's, but this is not I mean, BBC has been under attack for many years for its budget's always been cut, and it's always been criticized for being too left-wing, which is it isn't at all. It's just funny. The British broadcasting company is too left-wing. Anyway, but yeah, it's not a good sign for the next 5-6 years at least.
Yeah. I think my comment kind of showed my own left-wing bias, but I think, in all honesty, there's no such thing as left and right-wing, especially like TV shows and all that. I mean, it borderline makes no sense, really. There's no such thing as implementing that. At least when it comes to entertainment. I mean, your news and stuff, of course, but and is he in charge of what, BBC News, or even everything that falls under the BBC umbrella?
Look, to be honest, I don't exactly know the specifics of the chain of command in BBC, but Director General is usually regarded as the the editor at chief or something, chief editor, like the basically he has oversee over content, as far as I know, of everything basically. I don't. I mean, I assume because BBC has all these. It's a large bureaucracy. I don't. I assume he may like. There may be. I mean, obviously, his authority is delegated in some areas, and to be honest, I've always like the board has a lot of power, and BBC Ward is a separate entity sometimes. So I don't know the exact chain of command, but I'm sure he will have a significant impact in the in the direction over the course of the next 5 and maybe more years.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so if he happens to have also control over the entertainment side of it, I just had a good idea, an easy one. He just needs to revive Top Gear with the old cast, with Jeremy Clarkson. That I think of conservative show. That would be a conservative show. It's about car. It's about oil. It's about men. They make jokes. Jeremy Clarkson is known for making jokes that fall under, they can be racist or homophobic. I can't remember any specific ones, but he's been accused of this.
No, yeah, one of the reason why the Top Gear, he was basically kicked out of Top Gear, Clarkson, was because he got into a physical fight with a producer and apparently punched him or something. But to be honest, I don't think, first of all, BBC can afford him anymore. I think Amazon is just the deal is a much bigger deal. Like that's one of the ways BBC is always. That's one of the ways recently Tories managed to weaken BBC. BBC is forced to publish all all its salaries it pays to major stars, something that private companies are not. So so it created hiring people like Clarkson or famous people is very hard for BBC, because as soon as he hires them with big salaries, then there is a backlash from the other side that, oh, we are like schools don't have enough funding, but you're paying 300,000 a year to Clarkson or whatever. So yeah, BBC is just they find it difficult to do whatever. I mean, yeah, from the right-wing comedy thing, the only comedian I remember, I saw a few comedians who were like pro-Brexit on a few shows, but even they didn't seem like right-wing. They seemed more like socialist, like this is gonna have bad connotations, but I don't mean it, but just nationalistic, social nationalist, like rather than a neoliberal, internationalist, right, typical like what we think of a right winger. And yeah, I don't think racism is acceptable anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be BBC is in a tough position, very tough position.
That's interesting. And I mean, he's known for making really good, all kinds of content. I mean, joking about Top Gear, back in the day, I used to love it. And I mean, really the production value and everything, it was the only car show that is like that. I'm sure people have seen car shows on TV. They haven't changed for past like 30 years, but their level of production was huge. And now, of course, it's Amazon's continuing. Okay, so let's stay within the media bubble. The next story is from Australia, right?
Yeah, this was quite interesting. Hopefully, we're gonna have a regular segment in our show looking at media coverage of news stories, and this one kind of piqued my interest in that way too. But first, the news itself. Australia, they just, I think, approved a draft or completed a draft of a law that if passed, they will be charging Facebook for news shared on their platform. And well, Facebook was not happy with this at all. So they basically let me read this for you. Facebook, this is according to Guardian, and I'll come back to this because this is partially what I'm talking about, the coverage. Facebook threatens to block Australians from sharing news in battle over landmark media. Digital Giant says it will stop users of Facebook and Instagram sharing local and international news if new law proposed by competition watchdog is approved. And by the way, let me clarify something to people you might know this, by the way. In at least within British and Australian system, a watchdog, a commission or whatever, in this case competition watchdog, they propose a draft. This draft gets redrafted. Then this redraft goes to the parliament. Then there it gets again redrafted. Then it gets amendments. Then it changes. So like a proposal from a watchdog is like saying Sam had an idea, basically. That's as far as it goes. The mandatory news code has been backed by all the major media companies, including News Corp Australia, which I believe is owned by Murdoch, Nine Entertainment, and Guardian Australia, as a way to offset damage caused by the loss of advertising revenue to Facebook and Google. But this is Facebook's official announcement. Assuming this draft code becomes law, we will reluctantly stop allowing publishers and people in Australia from sharing local and international news on Facebook and Instagram. The managing director of Facebook Australia and New Zealand, Will Easton, said in a blog post on Tuesday. So basically, they want Facebook and Instagram naturally to pay for every time their news stories are shared. Like if we share news, and the content is by Fox, for example, they should pay Fox for that content. That's the proposal. What's your take on it first before I go into my take?
I mean, I think from Facebook's point of view, I mean, this is ridiculous. Them being charged for content being shared on their platform, and I guess for the media, it just all has to do with money, right? They probably want people in one way or another to end up on their website and read the news there. Although once you click on a link from Facebook, it takes you to your news website, and then there you can get your advertisement money through Google.
This is about content. So I would assume if, for example, you post a video of Fox News on your channel, like a video of their show, I think that's about that. And somebody sees it in Facebook, doesn't go to your website
But, yeah,
or read
but for a news article, you have to go to their website.
for a full one, yeah.
Yeah, and this will cover that too.
But remember, I think more than 80% of online traffic is videos, are videos.
Yeah. But yeah, it just seems like I mean, I think there's so many things wrong about Facebook. I mean, this is just a general point, but the way that the things that they're being attacked a lot recently, you know, whether it's the states being blamed the entire election on them, or even, I mean, here it's the media's right. I mean, if they can get to pass something like this and they want, but of course it's for money reasons. It all comes down to money. And I think from Facebook's point of view, it just makes absolutely no sense.
Sure. To be honest, I don't really see the justification for it because I think if Facebook starts creating its own news, right? They should get taxed like a news corporation. They shouldn't be allowed to use the tax loopholes that are currently in place for technology companies, right? But I don't see how is it fair if you have a platform for sharing content that you should pay the content producer. It's not like you forced the content producer to use your platform. There are alternatives, and it's yeah.
And you would have to
Basically,
apply this. I mean, then there's, of course, there's
I
talking
think
about Facebook and Instagram, but then there's Twitter, there's LinkedIn, and there's so many social media outlets out there.
yeah, this seems to be focused on Facebook. I'm trying to find the exact proposal, but I can't. But and my point was, like, to be honest, I am much more concerned about Facebook blocking people from sharing their content. Now they want to not want just like saying this shouldn't be shared. They are allowing anybody to share. Now you're saying they should not only allow everybody, they should pay them as well for like. I don't get. I would, to be honest, be glad if somebody, because overall, that's what I meant by media coverage. Overall, the media coverage articles I read, even there was a former employee, like a high-ranking employee of Facebook, who did the interview. Overall, people seem to have said that Facebook is threatening the companies. They shouldn't have done that. And yeah, it's a good law, but I don't get it. I don't get it. Let me read this. This is the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission Chair, Rod Sims, said Facebook's threat, to be honest, it doesn't seem that much of a threat to me. Anyway, threat was ill-timed and misconceived. The draft media bargaining code aims to ensure Australia's news business, including independent community and regional media, can get a seat at the table for fair negotiations with Facebook and Google seems set. I mean, I don't see how something that is backed by News Corp, backed by, uh, if somebody can explain it to me, maybe I don't know enough about the the specific structure of Australian media, but I think technology companies should pay their fair share of taxes. But this one to me seemed like uh, general, like people like to basically shit on Facebook. And there was another example of this a couple of weeks ago with somebody who I generally like, Matt Stoller. He's a left-wing writer, and he said face. I think he argued, if I'm not mistaken, he argued Mark Zuckerberg is personally responsible for the increased violence that is caused because of social media and all that. And yeah, it just seems to me it's become a cottage industry. Let's shit on Facebook, in me, especially in media like Guardian, Al Jazeera, all these places where they definitely have they have an interest in shitting on Facebook.
Exactly. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, don't get me wrong, and I completely agree with everything you just said. There's a long list of grievances that you can attack Facebook on. But of course, it seems like once again that mainstream forces pick on random, not random, but I mean things that aren't real genuine issues, but it just has to do more with what they're trying to achieve, and they paint it with such colors.
Yeah. I mean, for example, I think you can see the classic example is the algorithm. They say, oh, the Facebook and Twitter algorithm, they encourage conflict because they tend to promote these videos that are have a strong views that are like dissing someone, or like two sides of argument. And this is what all major newspapers, all major like any editor in a any editor in a traditional newspaper or in a news channel or whatever, that's what everybody's been doing forever. This is not something invented by Facebook or Twitter. You try to cover a story that maximizes your audiences, and usually conflict and drama attracts audience. And Facebook did not come about claiming to be an academic source for discussing deep issues. It's just for family and friends and that type of thing. So yeah, I just think it's unjustified attacks on. I genuinely believe things like Facebook, YouTube, even Google, they should become public utilities. They should be recognized like telephone lines, like gas, like water, as base necessities for living. And there should be public controller, at least a public watchdog or something. But I don't think doing some bullshit attack is the way to go about it.
100%. I mean, I think what I find one big issue is that they need to stop allowing him to buy every single big company out there and having everything under one roof. Now, that's a more serious issue that they should be focused on.
Yeah, exactly. Monopoly, like if focus on probably anti, the competition laws and all that, they could probably maybe decentralize Facebook. Or although I would say, I mean, I definitely agree with you there, but I don't want to break up Facebook, so to speak. I rather have at least one centralized system, not maybe Facebook, Google at least, just controlled by like like healthcare or like education with some government overwatch.
Yeah.
So everybody definitely has minimum access.
Yep. I largely agree there. I mean, I don't know exactly what should be done, but yeah, once again, the media and everyone have managed to find an issue where there isn't really an issue and avoid every other kind of real issue surrounding it.
Yeah, again, with this big caveat that I may be completely wrong about the Australian thing. If somebody knows about details, as always, the devil is in the details. Maybe I'm missing some, there is a special structure in Australia or something that this law would definitely help communities. Maybe that's something I'm missing. So if anybody can explain that, please.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more nuance to the story, and I'm sure there are more angles to it. But the fact that these media companies are looking after communities, I highly doubt that.
Yeah, it's just News Corp backs the draft code. Fucking yeah, it's just like it's like saying yes, and Satan also approves of this peace plan. Like, oh, thank you. Yeah, that's what we all needed to know.
Yeah, and then you wanted to talk about, or you wanted to mention something quickly about the U.S. elections or something in the U.S.
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted because it's so many bad news and stuff. There was a sort of a good news thingy. Senator Ed Markey, which was the incumbent senator for uh, Massachusetts, I believe. He was challenged by Joe Kennedy, and when Joe Kennedy challenged him a couple of months ago, he was ahead of him by 10 points in the polls because of the name recognition, because he had been active in the national scene. And soon he got the backing of people like Nancy Pelosi, which was very surprising because she always said you shouldn't challenge the incumbent. But suddenly, you know, she challenged him. Joe Kennedy was basically, even though Ed Markey is not necessarily the most progressive senator, he's very good on green issues, and he's recently, last couple of years, he has allied with AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So it became a symbolic fight between the left and the right of the Democratic Party, and I'm glad to say Ed Markey managed to crush Joe Kennedy, I think, and win. And in his speech, he acknowledged the youth vote, and I think this is very crucial. If left can convince incumbents like Markey that their ideas are the more popular, their ideas are the uh, tactically superior methods for winning over voters, that could be like hugely effective. Because, for example, civil rights, which was probably one of the more profound positive developments in American history, that was uh, that was pushed forward by Johnson, who's, I believe, like the declassified tapes from the era and stuff shows him to be basically a 100% racist, basically. And he pushed forward with civil rights. So I think politicians should be pushed. That's how usually change comes. So I think this is a good signal in that sense. I hope so. Although tomorrow Ed Markey might sell the left out again, as many others have before. So it might be too. Although I must add, left-wing candidates lost in two other elections, sadly, but they did perform well. They were both, I think, first time candidates, so hopefully in future maybe they can make up for it. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting what you said about left-wing politicians should realize that a lot of these issues, these so-called left-wing issues, are much more popular than the media would make people think, because the media use this trick, at least at the national level, and recently they used it with Bernie Sanders. They're like, look, Bernie Sanders lost against Joe Biden, which means that his ideas are not popular. Although if you watch if you listen to Kyle Kalinske, if you listen to The Hill, they point out every single time about polls on the issues themselves, not the candidate, and they're far more popular. They're actually popular. Some of them have 70-80% approval rate, not approval rate, but agreed by the general public. Things such as healthcare for everyone.
Yeah, I mean there must be a reason why Biden and Kamala Harris and many other politicians Obama even at least pretend, or they use a language that is tricky language, we support access to Medicare, and then like weaselly political language, because they know these ideas or these policies are popular at least. So there must be a reason they pretend that. But, yeah,
Well, Biden stopped pretending, though. Biden, he kind of stopped pretending, at least with healthcare.
yeah, Biden I'm so surprised about his stance on Medicare. He seems to be so hardcore. Like, yeah, he clarified that I'm definitely against this. Like, don't get your hopes up. So yeah, right there. I'm just saying as a general rule, nobody, even Republicans who cut education, uh, healthcare funding, they frame it as a way of, oh, we're gonna cut it here because the private money and the independent world, you know what I mean? They frame it in a way that they're not cutting funding, or they're not supporting it. So yeah, I hope more politicians. I hope it becomes reality that these ideas are actually lead to victories, so more people are inclined to follow these policies.
Yeah, at least those who want to follow them, because of course a lot of them know it, but I mean that's not where they're getting their money from, and they could care less that these issues are more popular. They just want to get their funding and I guess hopefully win. If not, they'll try a different angle, but keep on getting money from corporations.
Yeah, if they yeah, I mean, if these issues become popular enough, I'm hoping those people get kicked out. Although, yeah, it's a big dream at them. Yeah. As I said it, I realized how hopeless it is.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's it for this segment of our show, the quick takes, and please make sure to subscribe and like the video if you like the content so far.